Good afternoon, folks, and thank you for attending the 8th episode of Careers Launch Online. My name is Atik, and I'm a careers volunteer at UKCEDS, and I will be your host for today's webinar on finding an internship in the space industry. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, UKCEDS is the UK's National Student Space Society. We are a group of students and young professionals, and we run a variety of space-related events and competitions across the country. We also operate an early careers website called spacecareers.uk, and the team that runs that website also runs this webinar. And this series is designed to educate you on careers in the space sector. You can find all of our previous webinars throughout the Space Careers website or through the UKCEDS YouTube channel. And a recording of this webinar will be available on the YouTube channel once it concludes. And we will be holding further programs like this over the course of the year and the coming weeks. So keep an eye out for those and follow us on social media where we will be providing regular updates. We'd like to hear from you during the webinar. We'd like to keep our audience engaged. So if you're on Twitter, please use the hashtag CareersLaunchOnline. And if you go to the Space Careers website, there's a live chat where you can interact with each other, or you can also submit questions through the Q&A box on the website. And we will select some of those questions to ask our panelists. Today's webinar will be a panel discussion that explores the pathways you can use to secure an internship in the space industry, which will hopefully be the beginning of a good and long career. This is a great opportunity to hear from some space industry professionals who will be able to provide you with some great insight if you're in the early stages of your career or just interested in the space industry in general. The space sector is one of the largest growing sectors worldwide, and especially in the UK. The British government has chosen this sector as one of the drivers of economic growth over the next 10 years. So, like I said, an internship is a very good place to start. So without further ado, let me introduce our three panelists. We have Angaraj, Sarah, and Jacob. Thank you very much for your time and taking the initiative to do this. So to kick things off, I think it'll be a good idea to maybe get a little bit to learn a bit about yourselves and sort of your background and sort of a brief introduction from each of you. Angaraj, do you want to start things off?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Atik. My name is Angaraj. I'm based at the Leicester Space Research Centre, University of Leicester. I'm doing my doctoral research in space instrumentation for the Cherenkov telescope array. So I did my undergrad from University of Leicester as well. And during my undergrad and master's, I had 3 summer research internships, one of which was on NASA's Near Space Imaging mission called SuperBit. And the other 2 was based in the Leicester Space Research Centre. And I'm quite honored to be here and share my experience about how you can gain an internship during your undergrad in the space sector.
Thank you. And Sarah?
I'm Sarah. I'm a 4th year computer science and artificial intelligence student at the University of Edinburgh. And I've had my main sort of internship was through the SPIN, or Space Placement and Industry Programme, which was at Pixelytics in Plymouth, looking at sort of Earth observation software. And I also had a very small early insights internship at Amazon. It's not really space sector, and not been announced yet, but I'm told I can tell you guys that I'm going to be interning at San Francisco at Loft Orbital in summer through the Brooke Owens Fellowship. That's me.
Great. And Jacob?
Yeah, hi everyone, great to be here. My name's Jacob Smith. I am a graduate engineer at Surrey Satellite Technology, and I did my undergrad at the University of Bath in mechanical engineering. I then did a year-long industry placement after my second year at Airbus Defence and Space in Stevenage, working in the mechanical products team. So that was working on the big geostationary communication satellites on something called finite element analysis, which most people probably won't know what it is. But basically, you can't test the full satellite. It's too expensive. You can't keep testing and breaking it, and it takes a long time. So you have to basically do simulations. So I was working on simulations for like structure. After that, I finished my bachelor's in engineering and then went to Cranfield University and did a master's in astronautics and space engineering, and now just started work.
Right, thank you. So you can see we've got quite a professionally diverse set of people here. We've got everything from research to mechanical satellites. So what I want to ask you guys is, how exactly did you go about finding your internship? What was the process like, and what was your journey like? Because it's a personal thing and it varies from person to person. So I think that's a good next step to go with. So shall we go with Sarah this time?
Yeah. So I just kind of started looking in my second year, and I didn't really know where I wanted to work or what I wanted to, like what industry even. I had thought about aerospace, but I'd also thought about big tech, and I wasn't really sure. So I kind of applied to everything I could find, and I'm really glad I ended up at the Spin placement. I think I saw it on LinkedIn or something, and I went on the website and looked through all the projects, and thought Earth observation sounds really interesting, so applied for that. But yeah, I did kind of do a kind of brute force approach in my first time looking for an internship, which I don't know if I would recommend. But yeah, it was good. I think I also just cut out any companies I didn't want to work for. I think lots of people were just doing a similar approach or just apply to anything. But I kind of didn't want to work in banking. I knew I didn't want to work for like a consultancy company, so I just kind of cut out all of that and just try to focus on the ones that I maybe want to work in, but I wasn't quite sure. Yeah, that's kind of it.
Right, thank you. Jacob?
Yeah, I was similar to Sarah actually. So I knew I was interested in space, but I also knew that like any internship I could get would be a great experience and really rewarding. So I was looking for basically any engineering-based internship. So I was studying mechanical engineering, which is quite broad. So I could apply for like aerospace-based ones, space, any just general engineering things. So I was looking on like websites like GradCracker. They've got a whole section on internships, also spacecareers.uk for the space specific ones. My university actually have a like a portal, and I think it's quite common across universities. They have their own little jobs board, which is like specialized for internships. And yeah, I think because mine was a year-long placement, it's quite like a common thing across companies. So they kind of separate that to the normal just internships at any point during the year. And I applied for probably quite a lot. I can't remember how many, but I remember the one that I got at Airbus was probably about the fourth or fifth one I'd applied to at that same site in Stevenage, and I've been rejected from the first like four, and just kept going and finally got this one in the mechanical products team, which I was really excited about. But yeah, I think any experience is great. So just be open and flexible would be my advice.
Fair enough. And you touched on this a bit, Jacob. And we do host a large amount of internships and career opportunities on spacecareers.uk. But Angaraj and Sarah, did you guys in particular use any resources or any? Where in particular did you look for internships?
So sorry. Yeah. So I think there are basically two routes for internships: the hard one and the easy one. And I suppose people want to know the easy one. So the hard one is the one that Jacob and Sarah mentioned, and the NASA one that I did. You send your application to these adverts. So obviously go for that. When you look online, look through different advertisements like GradCracker. However, there is actually an easier route, and this is the advice that I have given to my undergrads, especially if you're first year and second year undergrads. What you need to understand is if you have PhD or postdoc scientists or professors in your university who are doing a research, everyone likes free help, right? So if it's your tutor or or PhD researcher you know well, if you literally approach them and you say that, especially this is in first year, that I would like to gain some experience, because this is an easier route, there's a possibility you might not get a paid internship, but you do gain valuable experience. So if you go up to someone, a researcher in your department, and you say, I would like to gain some experience in data analysis and or anything like that, and I'm okay with not getting paid. This is, as I said, it's more like first year undergrad or second year undergrad, and that's a valuable way to gain the first experience at least, because that way your CV already has a research experience, and then you can, and it makes it easier when you apply for the paid one. So I think that's one of the things that I told my undergrads as well, like especially if you're in first year, just approach the professors, especially the observation people who sit on so much data. They love to have undergrad interns to come and help them, and that is, and yes, you're not getting paid, but the amount of experience you gain out of it is absolutely incredible. The skills you gain out of it, especially in programming, is incredible. So that's the advice I give in parallel to looking for things online.
Okay, fair. Do you have anything to add on that, Sarah?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Jacob that the career services, I think, are always so underrated, that there's so much good information there on universities' websites. I kind of ignored it in first year and part of second year, thinking it was going to be useless, and I discovered it's such a great resource, so definitely use that. But yeah, there's loads of good websites out there. My very kind of first approach was, what companies do I know and would I like to work for, and Google them. Do they have any internships open? I think I also like Google like top 10 tech companies to work for and all that sort of thing, and to just get ideas of where I would want to work. But then yeah, I looked at use lots of the sort of common websites, just like LinkedIn Jobs, or even just like Google Jobs. If you Google like software engineer internships, there's so many that come like up that are near you, and it's quite a good yeah, they've got quite a good search function for jobs on Google. But yeah, all the big common websites they're really good. So just have a scroll through there. It might take some time to find ones that are suitable, but it's worth it. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. And we have a question here that's come through from the audience. Suppose it's a bit of a generic question, but it's how much do you get paid as an intern? And I suppose it applies to the paid internship jobs. Does anyone want to take a shot at that?
I think it massively varies probably from company to company. From my experience, it was plenty. It was enough to live on, and like pay rent and whatever. And it wasn't like a key criteria for me in trying to find the highest paid internship. It was just the experience I was looking for. But I can't actually remember how much I got paid for my year.
I think just to reiterate what Jacob says, it's they pay enough for you to live on in that summer. Obviously, not going to be saving massive, but as Jacob says, it's not really about the pay; it's more about the experience. So if it's outside your city, so for example, if you're from Leicester but you found an internship somewhere else in Manchester, then obviously you have to make sure that it's paid and that it covers your summer accommodation and food and maintenance. And that is usually covered. Like if it's a paid internship, they make sure they cover them. There are a few ones outside England as well, but if you go for them, those definitely will be covered. So if it's a paid one, it's enough for you to sail through the summer, sometimes even to save a little bit, actually.
Yeah, I'd say the space industry is usually pretty well paid, and it will vary a lot. Like if you want to work in a small company, you likely won't get as much, especially if it's a startup. But if you're like working in one of the big companies, generally they have like set rates that are very, very good, decent. Just for the space placement and industry program, they have a set rate that the minimum that they have to pay is $1,500 a month. But some of the bigger companies, I think, add on to that. But that's the sort of minimum that you get for the space placement and industry program, no matter where you work through the program. So.
Right. We've got a good question here, which I think sort of carries on from this. What would you say was the main thing that companies looked for within the applications that you submitted?
I think for mine, well, the one that I got anyway, it was a lot down to the technical knowledge. That's really what they're looking for. So at the first stage, it goes through HR and they're looking for the general teamwork, communication, competencies, things like that. And just if they think you're going to fit in their team and like actually be able to turn up to work and do a good job. But then when it got to the selection process with the actual department, my interview was half an actual technical test as such. So they gave me some questions to answer, like engineering questions. And obviously that's depending on what subject you're doing. But for my experience in particular, it was largely down to technical know-how.
Yeah, I think for this one, because I have been on both sides, I've had two interns work under me and I have myself work as an intern. And when I interviewed my interns, there are two things that I've seen that I look into or the other scientists that look into. So one, obviously, we look into how passionate you are about that particular project. So in my case, I'm working on the Cherenkov telescope array. I wanted to know how much the intern knows, at best. Obviously, I know that they're undergrads. How well they know the project itself, not necessarily technical, but what's the telescope doing, what instruments it's using, what are the recent discoveries it has made, and why did you choose to apply for this internship? So that's more of the non-technical skills. And then we proceed to the technical skills. And bearing in mind, obviously, this is for a summer internship. I have never expected a massive amount of skill from the undergrads. For example, if the student says, I have experience in Python, and that's good enough for me. It doesn't have to be an advanced Python, programmer. I mean, the other side of internship is for the undergrad to learn as well. I think those are the two things that I personally have looked into: how passionate you are, and then 40% or 30%, what skills have you already gained from your undergrad?
Right.
Because I have had students who are very skillful, but they had no idea about the project. So that's not a good thing either. So that's an important thing to remember. So when you're applying for a project, make sure you know what it's about.
Yeah, for me, for my internship, it was definitely like a mix of like passion for space and interest in space and like willingness to learn. Because I went into that internship having never known pretty much nothing about Earth observation. And I spent my first 2 weeks just learning about Earth observation. So you have to be willing to learn. But yeah, for me, for that one, it was also a big part of it was my programming skills, because that's kind of just what they were looking for. But I think, again, it does vary quite widely between companies, and especially like your size of company and stuff. The level of knowledge you're expected to have is very different. But it's all stuff you can find online. Like it'll be in the job description, or it'll be in their values. Like for example, I know it's not a space company, but Amazon, like their core values, whatever it's called, they're on the website, and they really you need to know them for your interview, otherwise you're not going to get anything. So you just make sure you scroll through the website, and it will probably be quite clear what they're looking like, what sort of qualities they want, and you can kind of adapt it to that.
Yeah, and if I could just clarify actually what I said earlier, when I said technical skills, it's not, I knew nothing about how satellites work or how to build them or how to analyze them. It was generic engineering things that I learned in first year, but they just wanted to make sure I was confident on, so I could then build upon those and apply them in the job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these themes do crop up a lot in applications, and I think one thing that also comes up a lot is the soft skills, communication, team working, presentation, stuff like that. It's usually the stuff that people tend to miss out on in applications, so that's one thing to look out for. I've got a question here. From it's more on a sort of physics research line, so it might be down your alley, Angaraj. How can I go from a physics bachelor's into the space sector? This person is currently on a placement as an accelerator physicist.
Sorry, can you say it again?
So this person is currently on placement as an accelerator physicist, and they want to know how they can go from a physics bachelor's into the space industry.
Oh, I think it's absolutely easy. So this is another question I get quite a lot. Do not worry at all about going from one discipline to another, because my degree was in astrophysics and my PhD right now is instrumentation. So the skills from all these disciplines are highly transferable. I think that's my personal belief. The basic level is quite straightforward. If you have a degree in physics, you can easily go on to engineering. I'm not saying physicists are smarter than engineers, because I do say that sometimes. But even if you're doing a degree in physics or engineering, it's very easy to go from one to another. And industrial people know that. So people who are interviewing you, they will know that. Obviously, you have to make sure that you show that as well, that you're aware of it. You have the same analysis skills. You know how to handle data. If it's experimental, that's fine. Even in physics undergrad or masters, you still work with experiments. So I think it's highly transferable. So don't ever worry about going from one discipline to another. Even if it's going from physics, like experimental physics to theoretical physics, I've seen that happen quite commonly as well. So it's never an issue.
Right. I think Sarah and Jacob, you guys touched on this as well, that there's a lot of transferability, and you can, because you guys have done multiple internships as well, in industries that you didn't specifically think you might want to work in. So I suppose it's sort of along the same thread. We have a question on writing CVs. Do you have any advice for writing CVs specifically when it comes to internships?
I think you want to be able to show that your skills, like how you've applied your skills, because especially if it's your first internship and you've never had one before, find things you've done, like whether it's university projects or projects you've done yourself. Find skills, like ways you've applied your skills, and make sure you show that you've not just gone to university and been told all the theory and stuff and never really applied it. It can be really simple things, but also in your CV, rather than just saying I did this, say what what was the outcome of that? Like, so rather than if you're having a piece of code, rather than I wrote this piece of code that did this, I wrote this piece of code that did this, and like this improved this other thing by, or something like along those lines. Like, yeah, make sure you really highlight how you made something better, or the benefit of what you made, not just how you did it and what technical skills you used.
I think I would absolutely highly agree with that, because that's a very common mistake students make. In the CV, they put, I worked on this project, and the project sounds very interesting, but there's no details in the CV about what you did, especially what went wrong and how you made it better, or how you tried to make it better. I think those details are quite often missing in CVs. I've only seen students put project names, the total outcome, but there's no individual contribution details in the CV, and that's very, very important. You have to go very detailed. What programming language did you use? What did your script do, and things like that. So that's very, very important to have in the CV.
Yeah, I also agree with what they've both said. I think the only thing I'd add is if you're looking for your first internship, then you might not have a lot of experience to put on your CV, but I would just put everything that you do have, even if you don't think it's relevant to the job. If it's a different part-time job you did for a couple of weeks over a previous summer or something like that, it's still valuable experience and transferable skills that we're talking about earlier that you can apply to working or being in the workplace. And also on the university side, I think it might be useful for employers if you could put a few modules that you've done at the university down, so they know what you have done at university and what you're aware of. Especially, applying for your first internship. That could be useful.
Right.
I've actually had this. So I've actually had this intern as well as an example in his CV. So he put all, as Jacob said, he put his modules where he got a first or two on. But one of the things that really that highlighted him from all the other people who submitted the CV was, in the CV he had mentioned, for example, he works on motorbikes projects. I mean, that has nothing to do with space, obviously. But the fact that he mentioned that he has hands-on experience like that to open an engine and, tinker around with it. So those are things, even if it's a side project you're doing, something you're doing in a garage, obviously it depends on what you're applying for. If it's an engineering job, I mean, obviously Jacob would say better, but if it's an engineering job, those things, instrumentation, those things we really look for. I think that's very, very relevant.
Yeah, I mean, when I applied for, I've only done one internship. I've not spent my other summers doing technical internships, but I've actually spent them working in a cafe, and the skills I've gained from that are totally different to what I gained from an engineering internship, but equally valuable to my development and future prospects, really. So, yeah, anything's useful.
Fair enough. And again, when it comes to applying for these things, people do it in their own ways and with their own sort of motivations. What were the biggest challenges that each of you faced when you were applying for your internships?
I think for me, time management and rejection, especially like computing science. If you're any of the computing science students out there, you'll understand how exhausting it is to get a coding test, or everything you apply to. Sometimes it's just automated. It's not even there's not even a filtering set before you get the coding test. But I made the mistake of applying to far too many things and then being asked to do so many coding tests. I was like, I can't fit this in with long university. So it was just trying to prioritize which ones I wanted to do and move forward with. But yeah, just the time management of just I didn't realize how much time it would take to get from, you think you're submitting your application, that's you done and you can forget about it, but there's so much in between that and accepting a job offer. So I think that I still struggle with that, to be honest.
I think in terms of time, the best time I would say if you're an undergrad is November, December. So if you're looking for this, again, for summer internship, not for a year. So if you're looking for the following year, November, December is the time you should start, or you should start sending your application. And the first thing I would say, it does take time. It's not just sending your CV, because you have to update your CV based on that particular internship. So be okay with rejection, because you obviously you need to understand that, especially the paid internships they get so many applications, and it's fine. That's always going to be a part of academia. If anything, it teaches you how to handle rejections like that. But just understand that your job is just to send the application. Don't be too anxious about what's going to happen, what the results are going to be like, or anything. But November, December, I think that's the very good time, because that's when also in research groups they start thinking about who to hire in for the next summer, what project, what help do we need in this particular project. So that's my advice.
Right, and we've touched on this a bit, but I think for people applying for internships, especially if you're doing it for the first time, the most painful part of the process is when you get that letter back saying, "Thank you for your application. Unfortunately, we regret to inform you, blah blah blah." So, how did you guys deal with rejections?
Coffee.
That helps.
Yeah, just try again, really. As I said before, I applied for 5 at the same company before I got the one that I did. But it's not the end of the world if you don't get an internship at the end of the day. There's plenty of other things you can do in your summers. You can do summer schools and online courses, and as we were talking about earlier, like build your own things like motorbikes to get hands-on skills that way. So it's not the end of the world if you don't get one. It's amazing if you do, but I know lots of people working in industry who didn't get an internship. But yeah, I think with rejection, all you can do is just keep your head up and keep positive. Still balance your time, and yeah, your health is the most important thing at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think one of the key things that Jacob just touched on is if you have applied for internships and for some reason you couldn't get any internship for the summer, go for an online course. So for example, there are loads of online programming courses, especially by IBM. And I think that's almost equally good in your CV that you did an online course over the summer, and that that everyone can enroll into. So that's the advice I usually give my undergrads who get that rejection letter and they get very upset. And as I said, like if you go for a programming skill online course, that'll give you the same amount of skills as an internship. Obviously, it won't, you won't have the aspect of having a job over the summer, but still, I think in terms of long term, in terms of after you graduate, having done that course is going to significantly help you.
I think also you use like your rejections as a learning experience, especially if you get through to the interview stages. I think it's even harder if you get through to the interview stages and then you get rejection and you've invested so much time in it. But yeah, for all technical interviews I did, I always try to remember that my next one I would be better because of it. And especially like computing science technical interviews or programming technical interviews are generally a very similar format, very, very similar questions, and you will start to feel like familiar if you do lots of them. So yeah, use it as a learning experience, and yeah, remember that everybody gets rejected so many times. I can't count the number of times I've been rejected from my company, and I'm sure other people are the same. So yeah, it's not just you that's been rejected, which it sometimes feels like it is. You can see other people getting internships and everyone's doing amazing, but they've been in the same boat. So yeah, don't stress about it.
Yeah, I think Sarah just raised a really important point about it being a learning experience, and I would say, to add to that, ask for feedback. They'll give you some feedback if you're lucky, but always ask for more. They will have been making notes during your interview, and you have the right to see those notes. And yeah, just keep pushing and learning from it.
Yeah, and don't ever be frustrated. As I said, like it's quite easy to see that, oh, your friend got into that internship, but you think that this is really bad. But please understand that it's very, very normal to go through that process. Every single, even professors, when they were our age, they have been through this rejection process. If you're in academia, you go through loads of those. So it's very common. Don't go like, oh, that's it. I don't want to send any more applications. And it does dishearten you a little bit, especially at that stage. But don't be. It's very, very common. It's incredibly common for you to go through rejections.
Fair enough, yeah. And something I'd add on that is this is the space industry. Space exploration it's success that comes on the heels of multiple failures. So just never give up and keep trying. We've got a question here that's a bit more sort of finance oriented. The question is, what are the potential earnings when going into the space industry, and can it compete with finance and big tech?
To answer on the big tech,
Sorry, go on, sorry.
To answer on the big tech side, it definitely can. From like lots of my friends work in big tech, and the internship I've gotten this summer is very well paid, and it's very sort of on par to lots of the big tech companies. Yeah, like space is such a it's a big industry, and it's such a like fast growing industry that it's really, really like it's competitive for the companies too. Like they need to get students in, they're fighting for you as much as you're fighting for them. So there is generally quite well compensated.
Right. Angaraj, did you have something to add?
I know. So is this? So obviously, I think this question also depends on whether you're doing a year industry or a summer industry. So if it's a year long, obviously, if you have an internship with an industry, then the pay is slightly higher than compared to if you're working with the university. But again, there's too many factors there. What you're working for, what do you want out of it, what area you're going for. So I've had friends who did, because they were physicists, they had the transferable skills. They went on to do like a summer internship with the bank, and obviously the pay was slightly more. Not that I was bitter about it, but yeah, there are certain fields where the pay could be slightly more. But as I said, as Jacob said, I think it's you get way more than money out of internships, and for a long term, especially if you're at an undergrad stage, the things that you would gain from an internship, be it unpaid or paid, is far more valuable than the earning you get out of it. The earning in the internship is there just for your basic pay. It's not for you to like earn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. We've also got a question. So once you've gotten your internship and once you've secured it, do you have any tips for what happens after that? How do you prepare for what for most people will be the first sort of real career?
I think don't be afraid to ask questions when you get there. And just talk to as many people as you can, people outside your team, and try and find either interns if there are any. They'll probably put you together if there are others or interns with you at the same time. So yeah, make friends with them. There'll be lots of opportunities like outside of work as well you should get involved with. And it can be quite hard for the first time balancing then work with, not work, because I remember when I was doing it, I was so used to working all the time, just doing university work. But it's quite nice then to have some free time outside of work where you can't take the work home. So I started to get involved with things like outreach at the company as well. And that really helped me develop confidence and communication skills outside of work. So look for opportunities like that as well. I'm sure the others can say something now and I might think of something else in the meantime.
I think in my experience, especially the Durham one on the NASA mission that I worked on, if it's a summer internship, the learning curve is incredibly steep, and it's okay. And that's the whole point, because it's a 2-month, 3-month internship. You have to learn so many things, but be comfortable with not knowing things, especially in the beginning, because you're basically, this is how research works. You're basically thrown into it and you have to do it. So in my case, I was not at all experienced with C. And they asked me to do some really advanced stuff right in the first week itself. So I had to do a lot of background reading, and it's okay to do that. So take a step back. You don't have to straight away jump into the research itself. So be okay with taking a step back and going through a few tutorials. If they're asking you to write a script in Python, you don't have to jump straight into the script. You can take a few moments out of it, go to YouTube, learn the basics, and then go into it. Because the learning curve is very steep, but there's massive room for error. And at least the ones that I did. So be comfortable with that and just go with the flow.
Yeah, I would fully agree there, except that you're probably not going to be the smartest person in any room the time you're there. But it's a good reason for that. You're there to learn. So yeah, if you knew everything when you went in, there'd be no point in the internship. So definitely expect to feel at your depth. But know that by the end of it, you'll see such a big improvement and you'll notice like how much you've learned. So it's worth feeling at your depth for a while.
Yeah, I agree with that. And always be inquisitive. And just remember that you're also representing yourself as a potential future employee. So bear that in mind if you like the company and want to potentially work there in the future.
Fair enough. Yeah, and something like that is an internship is always a learning experience. So 6 months, 1 year, however long you're doing it, try to get the most out of it. Because you can ask stupid questions and no one would look down on you for that. We've got a slightly broader question here. Is it worth doing internships abroad?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And there's so much plus point towards it, because you're in a different culture. You network really well, and I've seen some of the adverts in universities in Netherlands. The pay is amazing. So, but I think if you get a chance, a research position abroad, definitely go for it because of the networking reasons. It doesn't mean that research is better than here. It just means your networking will be really, really solid. So definitely go for it.
Yeah, I think your internship's not, you are there to learn all your technical skills, but you're there for so much more, like the experience of being somewhere new as well. Like you might be doing it where you live, but yeah, it's about the whole experience, not just what you learn at your 9 to 5 or whatever your working hours are. So yeah, going abroad would be amazing. Like you'll get to experience so many other good things out with the company. So yeah, definitely do it if you have that opportunity.
Yeah, and that's a very good point about networking. I personally know a few lecturers who worked all over the world, and they have some very excellent connections, which I don't think you'd get if you sort of stayed in one part of the world. We've got a question about, it's again, physics, science related. So what master's courses are the best to go into the space industry if you're starting with a BSc in physics?
Again, as I said, there's no such thing as let's do this particular master's because only that's going to help you. There's no such thing. And I do understand, because when you're at an undergrad stage, you think that there are these flavors, astrophysics, particle physics, instrumentation physics, that they are channelized at undergrad level. That's absolutely not true. And it really doesn't matter. And the reason why I'm saying that is because even from my experience, I have actually seen people in instrumentation, which is my field, who did masters in theoretical physics. So it really, really doesn't matter at all, is my opinion. If it's basic physics level based, then you can easily transfer to anything else. That's my opinion. For example, in University of Leicester, I think there is a SEEDS master's program that I've heard of. That's more based on space exploration. So people who want to work on like spacecraft analysis and things like that. And I've seen people graduate from that master's, go on to space instrumentation, but also go on to completely different things like communications or completely different fields. So don't stress too much about what the exact field needs to be, because within that STEM, within that physics, engineering, mathematics, it'll still be fine, no matter what masters you have come from.
Right, yeah. And we've got a question for someone who's thinking slightly holistically. What if I end up not liking the work I do during my internship?
That's perfect. That's why you're doing the internship, because that's how you know that that's not my field. So if again, this touches on the previous question, if your degree is in astrophysics and you thought, let me try an internship in particle physics, and you said, no, this is not my thing, that's perfect. You found it out via working, and you know that this is not the PhD I'm going to do later, or this is not the grad job I'm going to take later. I think that's a really good outcome.
Fair. Sarah or Jacob, do you guys have anything to add to that?
I completely agree. Yeah, like I went into my internship not knowing if I'd like it, like the space industry, and it was a good result. I did like it, but it would have equally been a good result if I didn't like it, because it means you can take that out of your search for the next year, your grad job. So it's useful to know. It's all about learning like what you like, and what you don't like, and even that also about like the size of the company, and whether it's like a public sector, or private sector, like all of these things are things you like figure out whether you like or whether you don't like from doing internships, and there's no other way to figure it out. So yeah, it doesn't really matter. Obviously, you're not going to have as much fun doing your internship, but it will be useful.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. If you're really not liking it, talk to your manager, and they might be flexible with some of the work you're doing. But obviously, they've hired you for a particular reason, so they can't make it completely flexible. But yeah, it will still look great on your CV, even if you don't like it, and give you some valuable skills.
You also can talk about that. Sorry.
Yeah, go on. I'll go for it.
I think you can also like talk about that. Like if you're then applying for things in the future that are completely different, you can say the reason I'm doing it is because I did this and I didn't like it. And you can use that in your application to say like it was a great experience, but I didn't like it, and this makes me even more of a like an internship. They want to make sure that you're going to come back. Like if you're an employee, they want to make sure you'll come back if they want you, because it's like a really good way for them to recruit people. So if you have done that and you then go to apply for jobs, and you can say like, I didn't like that, I think I'll like this a lot more, it means you're more likely to stay there, and it actually makes you quite like an attractive candidate. So yeah, you can use that as well in your applications.
Yeah, I think the other thing I wanted to add to what I said, obviously, do think about why you didn't like it, and don't completely rule out that whole field. So as I said, if you did an internship in particle physics and you didn't like it, that doesn't mean that you'll never like particle physics again. It might be that particular project was a bit boring. But the other thing that Sarah said that was very relevant, and I've had this again in the past as well, do specify why you didn't like it in a more technical level, because that's really good. If you can say that, oh, they use this programming language, I don't like that language because of this, that's brilliant. You're showing that you have an in-depth knowledge of what you didn't like. And that's actually a really good thing in interviews.
And there's lots of factors that play into whether you like it or not. And it might not be the technical work, it might be the people around you, or just the general structure or logistics of how it's all working. So yeah, make sure it's actually the technical work or whatever you're doing that you're not interested in.
Right. Unfortunately, that is the last question we have time for. There are a few sort of repetitious questions that have come up on the feed about places to look for internships, or what to do if you don't have enough experience. We've covered that in the early part of our discussion, so perhaps you might want to go back and look at that. But anyway, thank you everyone in the audience who have submitted questions, and a massive thank you to our panelists, Angaraj, Sarah, and Jacob. Thank you very much for taking the time to do this and for talking about your experience and giving us your insights. It's been quite enlightening for me, and I hope for anyone else listening or watching. Thank you for talking about your sort of different routes into the space sector and the different skills that you've developed and challenges you've encountered. We really value the feedback that you guys have. So if anyone in the audience can take out the time to fill out our feedback forms, that would be great. You can watch the other episodes in the Space Careers series by following the UKSEDS platforms on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. You can sign up to our newsletter at ukseds.org. And thank you for watching, and we hope to see you soon at the next webinar.